The North Atlantic doesn't forgive mistakes. March 1942. The water is black as coal, churning under a sky that hasn't seen the sun in 4 days. Convoy HX 229 stretches across 12 miles of open ocean, 43 merchant ships loaded with fuel, grain, steel, ammunition. Everything Britain needs to survive. Everything Hitler wants at the bottom of the sea. Lieutenant Commander James Hartley stands on the bridge of HMS Vanguard, a town-class destroyer cutting through 15-foot swells. His hands grip the rail. His knuckles are white. He's 29 years old and he's already lost count of how many ships he's watched go down. Contact bearing 270, range 1,800 yards. The shout comes from below, from the Aztec room, where Petty Officer Davies hunches over the sonar equipment, headphones clamped to his ears. The ping echoes through the hull. Ping, ping, ping. Hartley doesn't hesitate. Hard to port. All engines full. Sound action stations. The alarm screams through every compartment. Men scramble. The Vanguard heels hard, throwing spray across the deck. But Hartley knows, he knows, they're too slow. 1,800 yards away, beneath the surface, Captain Lieutenant Werner Schultz watches through the periscope of U-507. He's been tracking this convoy for 6 hours. His crew is silent. Professional. They've done this 17 times before. Tube 1 ready, Hercule. Fire. The torpedo launches with a hiss of compressed air. It runs hot, straight, true, 42 knots toward the belly of SS Empress of Canada, a 21,000-ton passenger liner converted to troop carrier. 3,000 souls aboard. Hartley sees it happen from 1,000 yards out. The flash. The column of water erupting 200 feet into the air. The deep, gut-punch boom that rolls across the ocean like thunder. The Empress lists immediately, her starboard side blown open, seawater flooding through twisted steel. Contact lost, sir. The sub's gone deep. Hartley slams his fist on the rail. Damn it! Deploy depth charges, pattern Delta. The charges roll off the stern. 6 barrels, each packed with 300 pounds of Torpex. They sink into the black. 10 seconds. 20. Then the ocean erupts in massive white geysers, the shock waves rolling through the water like invisible hammers. But U-507 is already a quarter-mile away, slipping through thermoclines, using the layers of cold and warm water to hide from the Aztec pulses. Schultz knows exactly what he's doing. He's been trained by the best. And the Aztec system Hartley is using, standard British issue, Mark II, has a fatal flaw. It can't distinguish between a submarine and a school of fish when the target goes deep. By dawn, the Empress of Canada is gone. So is the Liberty Star, an American freighter carrying aviation fuel. And the Margaret Rose, a tanker loaded with 12,000 barrels of crude oil that burned for 3 hours before it sank, trailing black smoke across the horizon like a funeral shroud. 2,700 men, women, and crew. Dead. Hartley stands on the bridge as the sun finally breaks through the clouds, casting pale light over the wreckage. Oil slicks. Floating debris. Life jackets with nobody in them. His executive officer, Lieutenant Brennan, approaches carefully. "Sir, we're low on depth charges. Fuel's at 40%. We need to." "I know what we need to do," Hartley cuts him off. His voice is hollow. They need to keep going. 31 ships left in the convoy. 2 more days to Liverpool. And somewhere out there, U-507 is reloading. Back in Liverpool, 800 miles away, a different kind of war is being fought. Dr. Arthur Pemberton sits in a basement laboratory beneath the Admiralty Research Facility, surrounded by oscilloscopes, vacuum tubes, and experimental sonar equipment that looks like it belongs in a science fiction novel. He's 42, thin as a rail, with wire-rimmed glasses and ink stains on his fingers. Before the war, he designed acoustic systems for concert halls. Now he designs systems to kill submarines. He's been awake for 31 hours straight. Arthur, you need to sleep. The voice belongs to Commander Hugh Lawson, Royal Navy Liaison to the Research Division. He's standing in the doorway holding 2 cups of tea that have long since gone cold. Pemberton doesn't look up. I need to solve this. You've been saying that for 3 months. And I've been right for 3 months. Pemberton finally turns, his eyes red-rimmed. We're losing, Hugh. We're losing ships faster than we can build them. The U-boats are winning because they know our Aztec can't track them below 60 meters. They dive deep, wait us out, then surface and strike again. It's systematic slaughter. Lawson sets the tea down. The Admiralty is aware. The Admiralty is comfortable, Pemberton snaps. They think incremental improvements are enough. Better training. More destroyers. Longer-range aircraft. But none of that matters if we can't hear them. He gestures to the equipment around him. Modified hydrophones, experimental transducers, prototype signal processors built from scavenged radio parts. Aztec works by sending out a sound pulse and listening for the echo. But sound in water doesn't travel in straight lines, Hugh. It bends. It refracts. It creates shadow zones where submarines can hide. The Germans know this. They're exploiting it. And unless we find a way to see through those shadows... He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. Lawson is quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you need? Pemberton looks at him. Really looks at him. A ship. Live testing. And permission to try something the textbooks say is impossible. How impossible? Classified impossible. Lawson exhales slowly. I'll make some calls. Outside, the rain begins to fall. In the North Atlantic, Convoy HX-229 is 300 miles from safety. And the hunt continues. 3 weeks later, Pemberton is standing on the deck of HMS Starling, a modified Black Swan-class sloop that's been pulled from convoy duty and reassigned as a floating laboratory. The ship rocks gently in the calm waters off the Scottish coast, far from the main shipping lanes, far from prying eyes. You're telling me this works on temperature? The question comes from Lieutenant Commander Hartley, who's been temporarily detached from the Vanguard to assist with the testing. He's skeptical. Exhausted. Still seeing the Empress of Canada go down every time he closes his eyes. Pemberton nods, adjusting the experimental sonar array that's been welded to the Starling's hull. Not just temperature. Salinity. Water density. Sound velocity changes with all of them. The Aztec sends out a pulse at a fixed frequency, usually 25 kHz. But when that pulse hits a thermocline, a boundary between warm and cold water, it refracts, bends, creates a shadow zone underneath. And the Germans hide there. Exactly. Pemberton pulls out a notebook, sketches quickly. But what if we don't use a single frequency? What if we use multiple frequencies, transmitted simultaneously, at different angles? The higher frequencies stay shallow. The lower frequencies penetrate deeper. We combine the returns, process them through a phase shift algorithm I've been developing, and we get a three-dimensional acoustic picture of everything below us. Hartley stares at the sketch. I've never heard of anything like that. Because it doesn't exist yet. Pemberton's eyes gleam behind his glasses. The math only works if we can synchronize the return signals to within microseconds. I had to build custom circuitry. Borrowed components from a radio direction finder, a radar set, and a gramophone, of all things. A gramophone. The timing mechanism is surprisingly precise. Hartley laughs. Actually laughs, for the first time in weeks. You're insane. Probably, Pemberton admits. But we're going to test it anyway. The test submarine is HMS Scepter, a small S-class boat volunteered by the Royal Navy for experimental purposes. Her captain, Lieutenant Trevor Mills, is under strict orders: dive to various depths, move through known thermoclines, and try to evade detection. "This is Scepter," Mills' voice crackles over the radio. "Diving now. Depth 50 feet, heading 090. In the Aztec room aboard the Starling, Pemberton sits beside Petty Officer Davies, who's been specially trained on the new equipment. The console in front of them looks like nothing else in the Royal Navy: jury-rigged, experimental, with 3 separate oscilloscope screens showing overlapping waveforms. "Standard Aztec," Davies reports, watching the first screen. "Contact solid at 400 yards. Depth 40 to 50 feet. Clear as day, sir." Pemberton leans forward. "Now, Mr. Mills, if you please, dive to 100 feet and maintain speed." A long pause. Then, "Understood. Diving to 100. On the standard Aztec screen, the contact immediately begins to fade. The echo weakens, distorts. Within 30 seconds, it's gone completely. "Contact lost," Davies says, frustrated. "He's below the layer. This is the moment." The point where, in the North Atlantic, a U-boat would vanish and reposition for another attack. "Switch to multi-frequency mode," Pemberton says quietly. Davies hesitates, just for a second, then throws the toggle. The equipment hums. 3 different transducers activate simultaneously, each transmitting at a different frequency: 18 kHz, 25 kHz, and 35 kHz. The sound pulses overlap, creating interference patterns that ripple through the water. The 3 oscilloscope screens light up with different return signals. Individually, they're messy, unclear. But Pemberton's fingers fly across a set of calibration dials, adjusting phase relationships, syncing the returns. And then, "Christ," Davies whispers. On a 4th screen, newly installed, a composite image forms. It's crude, pixelated, but unmistakable: a solid contact at 100 feet, moving at 6 knots, bearing 115. "I see him," Pemberton breathes. "I can see him through the thermocline." Hartley, watching from the doorway, feels something shift in his chest. Hope. Actual hope. "Target depth now 120 feet, Mills reports over the radio. Turning to heading 270. The composite image tracks him perfectly. Every turn. Every depth change. Even when the Scepter drops to 150 feet, well below the thermal layer, the multi-frequency system holds the contact. "This is impossible," Davies says, shaking his head. "The training manuals say." "The training manuals are wrong," Pemberton interrupts, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "Sound doesn't care what the manuals say. Physics doesn't care. And now, neither do we. But success in calm Scottish waters is one thing. The North Atlantic in a storm, with a hostile submarine actively trying to kill you, is something else entirely." Commander Lawson arrives aboard the Starling that evening, brought by motor launch from Scapa Flow. He finds Pemberton in the wardroom, surrounded by data sheets and technical diagrams. "The Admiralty is impressed," Lawson says without preamble. "They want to move forward with production." Pemberton looks up, startled. "Production? Hugh, this is a prototype. I built it with spare parts and guesswork. It needs months of refinement, testing, quality control." "We don't have months." Lawson sits down heavily. "We lost another convoy yesterday. ONS 5. 13 ships. U-boats are operating in wolf packs now. Coordinated attacks. We're losing the Battle of the Atlantic, Arthur. The Prime Minister himself is asking for solutions." Pemberton is quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the portholes. "How long?" he finally asks. 4 weeks to build 12 units. 6 weeks for 24. They want them installed on the mid-ocean escort groups first, the destroyers and corvettes running the most dangerous routes. And if it fails? If the equipment breaks down in combat, if the calibration drifts, then we're no worse off than we are now. Lawson's voice is hard. But if it works, Arthur, if it works, we might actually win this thing. Pemberton looks down at his hands. The ink stains. The calluses from adjusting equipment. The tremor from too much coffee and too little sleep. I need Hartley, he says finally. He understands the operational side. He knows how the U-boats think. And I need Davies. He's the best ASTIC operator I've ever seen. If we're going to make this work in combat, I need men who've been there. Lawson nods. Done. I'll have them both assigned to the program full-time. And one more thing. Pemberton meets his eyes. This stays classified. Code word restricted. If the Germans find out we can track them through thermoclines, they'll change tactics. New doctrine. Different depths. We'll lose the advantage before we even use it. What do you want to call it? Pemberton thinks. Operation Clearwater. Because we're going to make the ocean transparent. They shake hands. Outside, night falls over the Scottish coast. In the North Atlantic, convoys steam on through the darkness, unaware that their odds of survival have just improved. By 4%. It's a start. April 28, 1943. North Atlantic. Position 52 degrees north, 28 degrees west. Convoy SC-128 is 4 days out of Halifax, bound for Liverpool with 37 merchant ships carrying tanks, aircraft parts, and enough fuel to keep the RAF flying for a month. The escort group is thin, just 5 warships against an ocean full of threats. But one of those warships is different. HMS Vanguard rides at the head of the convoy, her hull cutting through 12-foot seas under a gray sky that promises worse weather. Below decks, in a cramped compartment that used to be a storage locker, Pemberton's experimental sonar system hums and clicks. The installation was rushed, barely 3 weeks from concept to deployment, and the equipment still smells of fresh solder and machine oil. Lieutenant Commander Hartley hasn't slept in 26 hours. Routine sweep, bearing 045 to 135, he orders. Petty Officer Davies sits at the modified ASTIC console, headphones on, eyes fixed on the 3 oscilloscope screens. The multi-frequency pulses go out. Ping, 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 overlapping harmonics that sound wrong to anyone trained on standard equipment. Clear to 1,000 yards, Davies reports. Water temp shows a thermocline at 70 feet. Sharp gradient. Mark it. The convoy plods on. 8 knots. Zigzagging every 15 minutes to make targeting harder. It's not enough, it's never enough, but it's all they have. Until now. 15 miles ahead, beneath the gray surface, Corvettenkapitän Heinrich Lenz commands U-221 with the precision of a surgeon. He's 34 years old, veteran of 22 patrols, personally responsible for sinking 43 Allied ships totaling over 200,000 tons. His crew calls him Der Geist, the ghost, because he has a reputation for striking and vanishing without a trace. Hydrophones report propeller sounds, his sound operator whispers. Multiple contacts. Bearing 195. Range, estimating 12 kilometers. Heavy merchant traffic. Lenz allows himself a thin smile. Prepare tubes 1 through 4. We'll approach from the north. Use the weather for cover. Attack at dusk when they're silhouetted against the sunset. Jol Herkelu. The U-boat rises to periscope depth. Lenz scans the horizon through rain-spotted optics. There, the smudge of smoke against the clouds. Dozens of ships, fat and slow, laden with cargo. Exactly what he's been hunting for. He doesn't know that HMS Vanguard is waiting. And he doesn't know about Operation Clearwater. That ignorance is about to kill him. Contact. Davy's shout brings Hartley running. Where? Bearing 015, range. Jesus, range 7,000 yards and closing. Depth 90 feet. Hartley's blood runs cold. 90 feet, well below the thermocline. With standard ASTIC, they'd never have seen it. The U-boat would have closed to 2,000 yards, fired its torpedoes, and disappeared before they even knew it was there. But the multi-frequency system sees everything. Confirm it's a submarine, Hartley snaps. Not a whale, not a temperature anomaly. It's a sub, sir. Davy's voice is rock-steady now. Speed 7 knots. Course 190. He's maneuvering for an attack run on the convoy. Pemberton appears in the doorway, pale and sweating. He's been violently seasick for 2 days but refuses to leave his equipment. The phase correlation is holding. Bearing drift is consistent with a mechanical target. This is real, James. Hartley makes the decision in 3 seconds. Sound action stations. All ahead full. Helm, come to 015. Signal the convoy. Submarine contact, north sector. All ships execute emergency turn to starboard. The Vanguard surges forward, her engine screaming, her bow throwing spray. The alarm wails through every deck. Men scramble to their positions. Depth charge teams aft, gun crews topside, damage control parties standing by. Range 6,000 yards, Davies calls out. Target is, wait, target is diving. Depth 120 feet and still going down. He heard us, Hartley says grimly. He's running deep. This is the moment that's killed so many Allied ships. The submarine goes deep, slips into the shadow zone, and the ASTIC loses contact. The destroyer circles uselessly while the U-boat repositions or escapes entirely. But not today. I still have him, Davies says, wonder in his voice. 140 feet. 160. He's trying to hide beneath the layer, but I can see him. Clear as day. Pemberton is gripping the doorframe so hard his knuckles are white. His equipment is working. In combat. In the worst conditions imaginable. Range 4,000 yards, Davies continues. He's leveling off at 180 feet. Speed increasing, he's running. He can't outrun us, Hartley says. He's smiling now, a cold, predatory smile. Not anymore. Helm, maintain pursuit course. Depth charge party, prepare pattern Charlie, set for 180 feet. Inside you, 221. Chaos. Zerstörer, the sound operator screams. Destroyer closing fast. Range 4,000 meters. Lens's smile is gone. He can't possibly have us on ASTIC at this depth. Impossible. He's coming straight for us, Hercule. Dive deeper. Take her to 200 meters. Emergency dive. The U-boat's nose pitches down sharply. Men grab handholds. Equipment rattles. The hull groans under increasing pressure. Lens has hunted Allied convoys for 2 years, and this has never happened. Destroyers don't track submarines below the thermal layer. They can't. Unless something has changed. Range 3,000 meters. Still closing. Prepare to fire on my mark, Lens orders, his voice tight. We kill this bastard before he kills us. Range 2,000 yards, Davies reports. Target is at 210 feet. He's leveling off. Depth charges ready, sir. The call comes from aft. Hartley calculates. 2,000 yards. Closing at 30 knots combined speed. They'll be on top of the contact in 2 minutes. Stand by, he says quietly. The Vanguard rides the swells like a racehorse. The convoy is behind them now, turning away, putting distance between themselves and the fight. This is what escorts do. This is what they're built for. 1,500 yards. 1,000. Target is, he's turning. He's coming toward us. Pemberton's eyes go wide. He's going to shoot. I know. Hartley's voice is ice. Range. 800 yards. 700. Fire depth charges. 6 barrels roll off the stern rails, splashing into the Atlantic. They sink quickly, each set to detonate at 180 feet. The Vanguard cuts hard to port, engines full reverse, trying to put distance between herself and the blast zone. 10 seconds. 15. 20. Inside U-221, the sonar operator screams, "Wasserbomben!" Torpedoes in the... The world explodes. 3 depth charges detonate within 50 meters of the submarine. The shock wave hits like a physical blow, slamming the U-boat sideways. Lights shatter. Pipes burst. Men are thrown against bulkheads. In the forward torpedo room, one of the ready torpedoes breaks loose from its rack and crashes into the pressure hull with a sickening crunch. "Flood in the forward compartment," someone shouts. "Emergency surface. Emergency surface." Lenz has no choice. If they stay down, they drown. The U-boat blows ballast with a roar of compressed air, shooting toward the surface like a cork. "She's surfacing," Davies shouts. 200 yards off the port bow. Hartley is already moving. Gun crews. Open fire the moment she breaks surface. U-221 breaches like a wounded whale, water cascading off her conning tower. Her hull is scarred, her deck plates bent. She's hurt, possibly dying, but she still has teeth. Her deck gun crew scrambles topside, desperate to return fire. Fire! Hartley roars. The Vanguard's forward 4-inch gun speaks first. Boom! The shell screaming across the narrow gap. It hits U-221's conning tower dead center, punching through the thin steel plating and detonating inside. The explosion blows the hatch off its hinges. Men are thrown into the sea. Again. Keep firing. Boom, boom, boom. The 3rd shell hits the base of the conning tower. The 4th smashes through the pressure hull just aft of the control room. Inside U-221, seawater floods in with the force of a fire hose. The submarine begins to settle by the stern. Lenz, bleeding from a head wound, knows it's over. "Abandon ship," he says quietly. The crew doesn't need to be told twice. They pour out of the hatches, jumping into the freezing Atlantic, swimming away from the dying boat. Lenz is the last to leave, watching his command slip beneath the waves, taking 2 years of memories and 43 Allied ships' worth of vengeance with it. The ocean swallows U-221 whole. Silence. Hartley stands on the Vanguard's bridge, breathing hard, watching the oil slick spread across the water. German sailors are scattered across the surface, clinging to debris, waving for help. "Pick them up," he orders. "All of them." Pemberton emerges onto the deck, gripping the rail, staring at the spot where the submarine went down. His equipment worked. It worked in combat, in heavy seas, against a veteran U-boat commander who'd never lost before. The impossible had become possible. "It worked," he whispers. "It actually worked." Hartley turns to him. "How many more can you build?" Pemberton thinks of the convoys still at sea. The ships still sailing. The crews still dying. "As many as you need," he says. The survivors of U-221 are brought aboard HMS Vanguard in silence. There are 19 of them, 19 out of a crew of 44. They're pulled from the water shivering, soaked, some bleeding, all of them in shock. Corvettenkapitän Heinrich Lenz is the last to be hauled over the rail, his face gray, a bandage wrapped around his head where shrapnel opened his scalp to the bone. He looks at Hartley, standing on the deck in his salt-stained uniform, and says in perfect English, "You should not have been able to find us." Hartley just stares at him. War changes. Technology changes. Not this fast, Len says quietly. Not like this. They take him below, to a makeshift holding area where the German sailors sit wrapped in blankets, drinking hot tea, guarded by Royal Marines who look just as exhausted as they do. Some of the Germans are crying. Most are simply staring at nothing, trying to process the fact that they're alive. One of them, a young sound operator, no more than 20, keeps repeating the same thing over and over. You found us at 200 meters. 200 meters. Unmöglich. Impossible. But it happened. By the time HMS Vanguard rejoins Convoy SC-128, the news has spread. The merchant sailors line the rails of their ships, watching the destroyer pass, and they know. They can see the oil slicks, the debris, the German prisoners being led below. For the first time in years, an escort vessel actually killed a U-boat before it could strike. The convoy makes it to Liverpool without losing a single ship. London. Admiralty Headquarters. 2 weeks later. Pemberton sits in a wood-paneled conference room that smells of pipe tobacco and old leather. Around the table, admirals, intelligence officers, technical specialists, and Commander Lawson, who brought him here. Dr. Pemberton, says Admiral Sir Percy Noble, Commander-in-Chief of Western Approaches. We've reviewed your after-action report. The multi-frequency sonar system performed beyond expectations. It performed as designed, sir, Pemberton corrects gently. Though I'll admit I wasn't sure it would work under combat conditions. Modesty, Noble says with a thin smile. How British. The reality, Doctor, is that you've given us a weapon the Germans don't know exists. U-221's crew is being interrogated as we speak, separately, carefully, and not one of them understands how they were detected at depth. They think it's magic. It's mathematics, Pemberton says, and physics, and a great deal of luck. Call it what you like. We're calling it Operation Clearwater, and we're accelerating production. 48 units by the end of June. 120 by September. Every mid-ocean escort group will have at least one vessel equipped with your system. Lawson leans forward. There's something else, sir. The Germans will eventually figure out we have better sonar. They'll adapt, dive deeper, change tactics. We estimate we have perhaps 6 months before the advantage starts to erode. 6 months, Noble says, in which we sink as many U-boats as humanly possible. Destroy their experienced crews. Force them to train replacements. Break the back of the Wolfpack strategy before they can compensate. He looks at Pemberton. Can you refine the system? Make it better. Pemberton thinks. I have ideas. Active tracking algorithms. Multi-ship triangulation. Doppler shift analysis to determine speed and heading with greater precision. But I need time, resources, and... He hesitates. And access to captured German sonar equipment. I want to know what they're hearing. If we understand their capabilities, we can design systems they can't detect. Noble nods slowly. Done. You'll have everything you need. This is now the highest priority project in the anti-submarine war. He stands, and everyone else follows. Gentlemen, we have a chance to win this. Let's not waste it. 3 months later, the Battle of the Atlantic turns. In July 1943, Allied convoys equipped with Operation Clearwater systems sink 12 U-boats. In August, 15. By September, the Germans have lost so many experienced commanders that they're forced to pull their submarine fleet back from the mid-Atlantic entirely, restricting operations to coastal waters where aircraft can provide cover. The wolf packs are broken. Convoy losses drop from catastrophic to manageable. Britain keeps breathing. The war continues. And in a small laboratory in Liverpool, Arthur Pemberton works 16-hour days refining his impossible system, surrounded by oscilloscopes and differential equations and the knowledge that every equation he solves saves lives. May 1944. HMS Vanguard is back in port for refit when Hartley receives a letter. It's from the Admiralty, marked Personal and Confidential. Inside, a simple message. Lieutenant Commander Hartley, you are hereby awarded the Distinguished Service Order for exceptional leadership and tactical innovation in anti-submarine warfare. Your actions on April 28, 1943, resulted in the destruction of U-221 and the protection of Convoy SC-128. The Admiralty recognizes that your success was enabled by experimental equipment developed by Dr. Arthur Pemberton. This technology remains classified. You are not authorized to discuss the specific methods employed. However, we thought you should know, as of this date, Operation Clear Water-equipped vessels have sunk 47 enemy submarines. British convoy losses have declined by 63%. You and Dr. Pemberton have saved thousands of lives. Well done. Hartley reads it twice. Then he folds it carefully and puts it in his pocket. That evening, he finds Pemberton in a pub near the docks, a rare night off, a rare moment of peace. The engineer is nursing a pint and looks like he hasn't slept in a week. I got a letter, Hartley says, sitting down. As did I. Pemberton produces his own envelope. Apparently, I'm being considered for an OBE. Contributions to Naval Science. They can't even say what I actually did. They sit in silence for a moment, two men who've changed the course of a war and can never talk about it publicly. Do you ever think about them? Hartley asks quietly. The Germans we killed? Pemberton stares into his beer. Every day. 47 submarines. Roughly 2,000 men. Most of them younger than we are. But how many merchant sailors didn't drown? How many convoys made it through? I don't know. I can't count them all. Pemberton looks up. And that's the terrible thing, James. We measure success in deaths, theirs, and failures prevented, ours. But the ones we save, we never even meet them. They're just statistics. Convoy SC-128, 0 losses. 37 ships. 3,000 souls who went home to their families because we put some extra equipment in your sonar room. Hartley raises his glass. To the ones who made it. Pemberton raises his. To the ones who made it. They drink. The war ends in 1945. The full details of Operation Clearwater remain classified until 1974. By then, Arthur Pemberton is 72 years old, retired, living in a cottage in Cornwall with a garden and too many books. He gives a single interview to a naval historian, sitting in his study, surrounded by old equipment and fading photographs. People ask me if I'm proud, he says, his voice still sharp despite his age. And the truth is, I don't know. I built a system that killed thousands of men. Sent them to the bottom of the ocean in steel coffins. But I also saved thousands more. Kept Britain alive. Helped win the war. He pauses, adjusting his glasses, the same wire-rim style he wore in 1943. I think about that U-boat commander sometimes. Lenz. The one Hartley sank. He survived, you know. Spent the rest of the war in a POW camp in Canada. Returned to Germany in 1947. Became a teacher. Died in 1968. The historian asks, did you ever meet him? After the war. Pemberton shakes his head. No. But I wrote him a letter once. Never sent it. It's still in my desk drawer. He looks out the window at the ocean, visible in the distance. I wanted to tell him that I didn't hate him. That we were all just doing what we thought was necessary. That war makes monsters of mathematics. What stopped you from sending it? Because I realized he already knew. Anyone who lived through that They already know. The sun sets over the Atlantic, turning the water gold and crimson. Somewhere beneath those waves lie the wrecks of U-boats and merchant ships, destroyers and tankers, thousands of men who never came home. And somewhere in the depths, the old sonar pulses still echo, ping, 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 searching for enemies long since turned to rust and memory. The ocean keeps its secrets. But sometimes, when the mathematics align just right, when the frequencies overlap and the phase correlations hold true, sometimes we can see through the darkness. And that's enough.